Hey, welcome to the Broken for Better podcast.
We're a nonprofit organization with the purpose of equipping your marriage and strengthening your family so that your tomorrow can be better than your today.
Enjoy the episode.
All right, we are excited for this one.
Yes.
Listen, you ever have a couple that told you y'all should not get married? That's who we get to interview today.
That's right.
On our podcast. We got some things that we need to handle. Look at us now. No, honestly,
They had good calls. They
actually were dead right. You were.
Yeah.
It was actually Denette, do not marry him.
We wanted her to get married, just not to you. And it was the old you, not the new you.
That's right.
Not the Jesus you.
That's right.
That is very true.
Transformation.
Hey, listen, today we get the privilege to spend time with Paul and Susie Wirth.
Yes.
They were Denette's old youth pastor and mine my very end of my senior year, so it truly is a blessing. We're just going to talk about balancing life.
Right.
It's going to be the new series that we kind of walk through on the podcast, and we're going to talk about balancing life. And so before we get started, thank you for being here.
Yes.
Thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Give us a little bit of your story for those that don't know. You're both in ministry, run a church, kind of share where we're at. Catch us up to now, and then we're going to fire some questions.
Well, I mean, I'm shocked that you're asking us to do the balanced marriage because we have the imbalance, but maybe that's the best way to start this thing.
Yeah.
But Susie and I have been doing ministry now going on 34 years. We will be married 34 years in May. We have a soon-to-be 28-year-old daughter and 25-year-old son who he will be getting married in
April.
Wow.
So super fun. We've done youth ministry. We did youth ministry at 3 different churches, and then we have been at Relevant Church. We will be celebrating 20 years in January of next year.
Yeah.
That is
That
so
is
wild.
crazy to me.
Yeah.
That is so wild.
When you're having fun.
So real quick,
Yeah.
even about that, give us like the one thing in 20 years. I know there's so many stories, and I know a lot of them, but put one that you're like, this is a story that I will forever remember about Relevant Church.
Relevant.
And there's so many lives that you've touched, and
Yeah.
there's just so much. But
I think some of the things that mean the most to me are the life-changing monumental moments where like only God could have done that. Like when we bought the building that we currently are in right now.
Yeah.
We were about to be kicked out of the building we're in. We were leasing it. The guy we were leasing it from didn't want to re-up the lease for us. And so we were like, well, how if we buy it? And then he was like, you don't have enough money. I was like, well, you got to give me a price to tell me how I don't have enough money. He goes, you just don't have enough money. And so he threw a number out of like $1.725 million. I was like, you're right. I don't have enough money. And he said, and you have to close in 3 months.
wow.
And
Impossible.
it was,
Yeah.
it literally, the rest of my staff, I said, guys, we can't do this. And they said, well, Paul, either we do it or we're going to be on the street.
Yeah.
So, and it was one of those tough leadership moments because like I'm called to lead at a level that I'm unsure of.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And it was May and we had to close by August 31st. And so I said, okay, God, you need me to raise, and we had to raise $750,000.
Oh my goodness.
With like a congregation of $500-600.
No, we didn't have 500 or 600. Then we had like 350, 400.
Okay. So.
And so I just said,
crazy stuff.
this is dumb. I was like, wait a minute. Summertime is when nobody gives.
Right.
Everybody's gone. So
We had a pastor say, okay, so what's your like financial, like,
what's your capital campaign plan?
like we have no
I said, there is no plan. I was like, I'm getting up next
do or
week.
die.
I'm going to tell people you need
Yeah.
to give. We got 3 months to do it. And we're going to pray like hell. I mean, heaven.
And it happened. And it happened.
And it did.
Wow.
And
It was a
literally
miracle.
in 3
Yeah.
months, we watched God do what
Yeah, only
like,
he can do.
And it wasn't about the finances. That summer, we saw more people saved
Wow.
Yeah.
than we ever saw in any summer ever before. And it was like God was just saying, this is my church.
Crazy.
It's not your church.
Yeah.
What's so funny, and we got to get to this because we'll sit here talking to y'all forever.
Yes.
I love, even to this day, getting the opportunity to speak. And it's inevitable. It seems every weekend that I'm there, there's a story of somebody that walks up and says, I used to party in this place.
Yeah.
And to now give my life to the Lord in this place
Yeah.
has been super special. I mean, it is
Yeah.
crazy to
Yeah.
me. I mean, it happens more times than that.
Yeah.
So.
But you guys know how hard it is to balance ministry and family.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's crazy with y'all is I think we could talk about the miracles,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
those things are the things that we all want to champion. They're
Yep.
easy
Right.
to say, yes, look at God.
Yeah.
But in the midst of the miracles, we walk through other things we have to carry
Yeah.
and other things we have to balance. And you guys are the epitome of that in my eyes,
Wow.
because you have had to balance a lot. And so maybe just share a little bit about that part of your story too, if you don't mind.
Well, we were married 3 years, and then we ended up getting pregnant with Ashlyn, our daughter, who, when she was born, really didn't have any significant issues, other than just having like hip dysplasia and
Well, she didn't move a lot. Like,
Yeah.
you know, everybody reads those crazy books like What to Expect When You're Expecting
Yeah,
and
she
everything.
never met
we're like,
those mile
"Huh,
markers."
That's weird.
Right.
We're not getting any of that.
Yeah.
And
So
we didn't think anything
fast
about
forward
it 'cause we didn't know.
at 2, we were in Virginia at the time, and we took her to All Children's, and so they diagnosed her as mildly mentally retarded. And at that point, it was just like diagnosis unknown, you know. And so they did genetic testing, and back 7
Almost 8 years ago.
they did not, you didn't have the understanding of autism.
Yeah, the word autism was
She's
not.
never been diagnosed as autistic, but she is. Totally.
really?
Yeah.
She's
She's
never been
autistic.
Just been given the
And I
diagnosis.
think that because I think that autism it's not new, but it's more discussed probably in the last 15
Far
to
more
20
discussed.
years.
Sure.
Like there's more information.
And there are
out
more
there.
children that are diagnosed.
28
It's-
years
yeah.
ago, like here's the deal. The very words that Susie said, mildly mentally retarded, they can't use that word anymore.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Wow.
That's not a medical term that they would even
Yeah.
use because it's not, socially correct.
And I took her to a speech therapist, and they were like, "Well, you do know she's on the spectrum." I'm like, "I don't know what you're talking about. What's the spectrum?" So that's how it was, So we kind of were in the dark a lot, and it was just kind of learning by trial and error, and totally. When you talk about balance, like he said, we are probably the most unbalanced. I'm like, Lord, why did you call us into ministry and church plant and give us this little human that's now an adult that we care for 24/7?
Yeah.
It's a crazy thing to think about.
Yeah, when you look at the, just in preparing to have y'all here tonight, obviously we know y'all as dear friends. But when you just look at the numbers,
Yeah.
like the stats alone, it's like 1 in 36
Yeah.
of, children are facing some type of similar diagnosis.
Yeah.
Of those 36, like 40% are considered nonverbal, which I know Ashlyn has had major progress here
Yes.
recently with, different.
Talks a lot.
Yeah.
Because you had her actually, Dee, when she was like, what, 3? In the
Yes.
nursery for a
Yeah.
while?
At the time, I think I was still, that was, 25 years
Yeah,
ago, I was teaching, I think, kindergarten or first grade. That's just I don't know why I love that age. And she would come in, y'all would bring her. For some reason, she would come to me.
Yeah.
But if we could get her focused on something, she was good. But yeah, to see where she's come,
Yeah.
It's crazy. isn't
it's
it?
wild to see what all she's accomplished. But when you look at those numbers, and you guys are part of that statistic.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to be part of any statistic, unfortunately. But when
Yeah.
you look at that statistic, like, do you feel like you were supported? Do you feel like you had the community?
I think that we had the interesting thing is that a lot of people, they don't know what to say or what to do or how to help. So everybody is willing to help, but they don't know what to do or how to do it. Even our own families, for even after we had a diagnosis, they said, no, she's just a late bloomer. And
She's gonna
because
be fine.
nobody
Yeah.
wants to nobody wants to own it.
Yeah.
Especially your family, like we were owning it long before our families were. But I think probably the stronger statistic is that it's not just like 35 to 40% of the kids, but it's what happens to the marriage because of it. And that statistic's hovering around 89% of families that have a special needs child in them end in divorce.
Wow.
So I don't think
That is
I don't think churches
bonkers.
know how to handle it. I don't think people know how to handle it. And even couples don't know how to handle it. And this is what Susie and we did talk about this afternoon. Is I said, honey, why do you think that statistic is so high?
Well, it's because you're a caregiver 24/7 for this person. And yes, you go through, well, everybody has an infant and has to take care of them. And then you have toddlers until they become, independent. But a special needs person, they are forever. It's like our friend, mentor Janie Cockrell, she said, having a special needs child is like having a sentence.
A life sentence without parole.
Yeah.
Wow. A life sentence without parole.
Without parole. And the thing is what divorce does, this is going to sound really crazy, but what divorce does with a special needs family, it gives you respite.
Because I
would only have her 4 days a week, and she would have her 3 days, and then we'd switch, and then she'd have her 4 days, and I'd have her 3 days. So 3 days, you could just breathe.
Oh my word! Yeah.
And when you're married, and like you choose to say, no, we're gonna dig this out, the tension rises because sometimes we're human, and I feel like I've gotten up the last 3 days in a row. I'm not getting up now.
And we have this new rhythm. I retired from teaching in May, and so now I'm on staff completely 100% with Paul. And so we have not actually gotten into
what the new normal looks like.
Yeah, it's like
You're like, you're balancing.
We're
still unbalanced.
We're balancing the imbalance.
You're always going back, and you're always trying to, okay, what does he need? What and you do have to schedule it out. You're going to get up. I know I'm always going to get up Wednesday mornings and get her ready for her daycare, and because he goes to Bible study early. So it's like you have those. But then he was like, well, I said, well, last week you were like Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and he's like, well, yeah, because I had to get up early and I had appointments.
Wow.
So there's always that kind of a
tension,
unsettled.
I would think in a marriage and a relationship, you really don't like to keep score, right? Because score is something you throw out the window. But I could see it's such a real thing that I would have never thought about, because you can get kind of resentful and almost bitter out of that. Like, man, I feel like I'm carrying my in a hard seasons. That's
pit
amplified.
one another.
Yeah, and I would always tell people in marriage, it's not a 50-50, because it's not.
Yeah.
100%.
Everybody, both are 100% in, but sometimes, like in the stuff, in the seasons that we deal with, is like, it feels like, I just gave 112.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm out of balance right now.
Yeah.
And so, like, I think that the only way to combat that is through communication. Like, you have to just say, I'm frustrated right now.
So
I feel like I've just given
we need to,
more than I can give. And I don't want to give anymore.
recenter and figure this out so we can both be healthy. Thankfully, his parents have always been very, very helpful and an intricate part of care. Like, she'll go at this state now, she'll still go even to Nana and Papa's for Friday and Saturday sometimes, and that gives us like 2 nights.
You're like, what do you want to do? Nothing.
Right.
Let's
Sometimes
do
that's
nothing.
right. We're not.
But it's just
I don't even want
that,
Netflix and chill. I just want Netflix. That's it.
it's a
the chill part I don't
Too
need.
tired for the chill.
It's an
Just the
emotional and
Netflix.
mental break that you need, not in a bad break. But I'm just saying it is that you don't realize how much you are on until you're on all the time. And then, like, we went a cruise, just us last year, and it was like a 3-day
We did a 3-day booze cruise, and we thought it was the grandest thing in the world. And we were like, it was the worst cruise in the world. But
we
just
got to be
because
quiet.
it was just us, we were like,
no responsibility
amazing.
for
People were
anybody
like,
else,
you
right?
went on that cruise? We're like, yep.
But
And it was awesome.
I have a question. This actually isn't one that we gave you, so it's kind of off the cuff, and it might be kind of like real and raw, but I know that some couples that might be watching this, because you said that statement of it's kind of like a life sentence without parole.
yeah.
Did you ever have that tension as a couple saying, okay, it feels like a life sentence without parole, and yet this is supposed to be one of the greatest blessings? Like, did you ever have that tension of feeling like, man, how do I hold the balance of that statement in this hand, but also the balance of this is what I've been given, and how, like, for maybe that parent that's watching it going, yeah, that's how I feel. Is it normal to feel that way? Is it okay that I feel that way? Because maybe I feel guilty for feeling that way.
Yeah.
What would you say to that
Well,
parent?
man, I didn't even want to do this whole podcast because, like, they're asking us about parenting. I feel like there's a lot of guilt and shame sometimes that follow that, because you feel like, especially with, her needs, then I have this other child that was born 3 years later, and he kind of ended up being, I think he taught himself how to go to the bathroom, because I don't remember
he?
ever.
Does he know how to do that?
But I'm just
I mean,
saying.
he's 25.
You
I
did
think he
great.
figured
You
it
did
out.
great, Anthony.
You're on your own, kid.
So,
I'm dealing
Cass,
with
if you're
this.
watching this podcast, I think he's potty
But
trained.
back to your point about, man, that's a tough question because
Yeah.
it's like God always has been faithful. And that's my main word. You know, you look at the Lamentation scripture where you are, you know, great is your faithfulness. And that's kind of where we land. It's like you have to go back to gratefulness, thankfulness, mindset, because you could really spin into depression and anger and bitterness and
think
just
for me,
live in that.
You have to celebrate the small wins. It's not the huge monumental things. It's the funny things. I can just give you a for instance.
I know what you're going to say.
Just the other night, Ashlyn still will at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. A lot of times, we'll hear the door open, bang, and she's coming in, and she's going to pile in the middle of our bed. Praise God, we have a king size bed, but she is going to, and she'll be like, scoot over, and like she's moving in, and she's sliding in, and then she's laying there. She goes, "I love you, Mom. I love you, Dad," and then she goes, "I pass gas on you, Mom."
And it's like, go back to sleep. But what I was going to say, that was
laughing
funny.
the whole time, and like, so you just go, God, you know,
You just
thank
laugh.
you for
She
those
gives you
joy.
those- yes.
Like she brings joy, and they're
But
so.
you know, last weekend it was just terrible weather, and so we're sitting there, and you know, she will say things that you're like, I've never heard that before, and she just said, I didn't go to church today because it was bad weather.
Oh.
Bad weather.
Bad
Couldn't go to
weather.
church today, so
And
she
so-
stayed home with Nana.
Yeah, we just looked at each other and laughed, you know.
So
So-
one of the things, and I've had the privilege to see her on some of her great days,
Yeah.
where it's like the absolute joy and
Yeah.
jokes to be around. But then I've also been around some of her tougher moments,
Yeah.
where at a restaurant or at home, it's just something triggers. And what would you say as a family? Like, I hear the humor there. What would you say as parents? Like the biggest the uniqueness that she brings to your home in general.
I think there's something that if you don't have a special needs child, a lot of times you'll see a kid in a restaurant and they're having a meltdown or having a really bad day, and your immediate thought is, man, they need to do a better job of parenting.
Wow.
And
For the longest
I
time, I just didn't give eye contact to people.
I would just say- I
learned
would
to
just
don't look at
say-
people.
I would just say, pause before you have that thought, because you're not sure what kind of pain they're walking through on a daily basis. Because sometimes it has nothing to do with their parenting.
And them just
skills.
being able to go out and have a dinner, even if she's having a meltdown, is like the highlight of their week, you know? And so,
Absolutely.
but a uniqueness to the family, was the question?
Yeah.
What do you think of
Well,
uniqueness?
that's definitely and even hearing that, I can say, like, ooh, guilty am I, because I've probably been in moments like that where, you know, you get out, and you're like, wow, we just wanted a quiet dinner, and you don't put yourself, you know, when you hear the numbers this high, that
Crazy.
number is like the spectrum's all over, right? You have
Yes.
severe, and then you have some mildly. So
And
when you look at the severe, you just don't put yourself in those shoes. And I think it's very eye-opening to hear, man, grace might be needed a little more than we actually get.
we've been on airplanes, at theme parks, in parking lots. I remember a time Susie that had this happen to her just literally probably a month or so ago at our where our church is in the parking garage. Ashlyn gets afraid of heights. We don't know why. Right? We can't put a finger on it. But if she gets afraid and she's somewhere, she will completely sit down and lay flat down on the ground and not move
I was in the
and just scream like, I'm scared. She did it. She did it at Disney Springs one day. We were crossing the bridge over to Disney Springs. She's sprawled out.
And then
on
you
the
get the
concrete.
security
She's not,
people.
like,
What's going
she's
on?
not
Because
just
she's
gonna
an
pick her
adult.
right up.
No, we need a forklift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
I was
I don't know
by
about a
myself
forklift,
in
but
the parking
okay.
garage at Ybor. This truck comes up and he's just like I want to get by, can't get by. And so I'm like dragging her by myself. So there are uniqueness. So those are times that people don't see. And it's,
they're frustrated.
Man, it's a survival.
Right.
It's like you're in survival mode a lot of times. Thankfully, we've been in a year and 3 months of just, it's like a sweet haven where the medicines are working. She's sleeping well. She's in a good mood.
She's actually, these are just things that I don't think that people recognize. Because one of the questions that you guys had sent us beforehand was like, how difficult was it like when she was younger? What kind of challenges did it pose? And Susie and I looked at each other and I said, I don't feel like the challenges when she was younger are as magnified as the challenges when she's older.
Really?
When she's younger, you kind of expect certain things, and she was easier.
Yeah.
She was easier to manage.
Handle, manipulate. Yeah, but once they're like 18 and your size and then they put weight on, they're very strong when they want their way.
Right.
So we've both been in situations where we wrestled her on the ground. And I mean, it is intense.
Yeah.
And it is something you are just in survival, sometimes moment to moment. And we had it that season last year, 2022
was the
probably one of the darkest seasons of our whole life with her.
If somebody wants to know how I felt, you should listen to my first sermon of January 2023. And I was doing the quintessential sermon series that every pastor does, pray first. That all churches do at the beginning of the year. And so my very first sermon in that series was When God is Silent.
Wow.
Because what happens when you're praying and God doesn't say anything?
We just had gone through months and months of no answers. We couldn't get the medicine she needed for various reasons. We couldn't get her to sleep. And then she spiraled into less and less sleep, where she was going without sleep for weeks and weeks and weeks. And then if you realize what happens to the mind, it just gets worse.
I'm manic.
And so she was manic, and she would like go flop down on one bed and get up and go flop down on another, till finally, our son had come home, and we're like, we're going to have to do something to take her. We can't, for the first time, we can't handle her. And so
That was a helpless feeling.
yes, just despair. And you're crying out to God. We are taking turns sleeping.
And he's not answering.
I'm like singing in the middle of the night because that's all I can do, because he's trying to sleep. And I'm like, you're just in total desperation. And I know you guys have been there in your life. And Anthony came home. He stayed up with her one night. That night, it was like Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
And
December 23rd.
he the next morning, he's like, you're right. We got to take her somewhere. So we ended up taking her to the hospital. Long story short, we admitted her into like the psych ward. And then we were like, this isn't what we expected. And we immediately took her out. We're able to spend a night. It was just a desperate time. They gave us some medicine and we went home. She still kicked her heel in the wall the next day. I missed Christmas.
I preached Christmas Eve with not one family member present. For the first time in my entire life. Not my kids, not my wife, not my parents. So like it was like, and so I get it. And Denette, you asked a question earlier. You said, what do you say to that parent? I would say this. You can embrace the pain because you're not broken and your kid's not broken.
Right.
And sometimes you got to just lean into the pain and say, I'm hurting. Like this is painful. This is a painful season. And just say, and I'm doing my best to walk it out.
Yeah.
And sometimes your best is just, I'm going to get through the next 30 minutes. I'm going to get through the next 2 minutes. I'm just going to get through that because that's about all I got the energy to do. And that's okay.
I love those. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and you said, well, why did you have us on? Like, I don't know that we've balanced well. I think that, that percentage of the 89%, right? Yeah. You guys are the few, right?
Only by God's grace.
You're the 11%.
Right. Yeah.
And so when you talk about, yes, we haven't balanced well, I think we have such a construed view of what honest balance is. And we want to say that balance is like this even keeled thing where my life looks like the person next to mine, life, what I want it to look like.
Yep.
but balance for all of us is different because of the seasons that we're walking
Well,
through.
I had a very wise older lady tell me one time when Ashlyn was probably 3 or 4 years old, and she said, Susie, normal's just the setting on the clothes dryer. And so we're very probably abnormal.
That'd be normal.
I'll tell you what's interesting to us, and we talk about this a lot, and it's so like affirming to hear you say it, is the communication aspect. I think we so preconceive things in our mind of what it should be or not, and then we don't communicate.
Yeah.
You know, people have kids, and all of a sudden, I should be the best parent. Well, how should you be the best parent? You've never done it before.
Right.
You're learning with a normal child. Right. So don't think that like a normal child or a normal two children, you know what I mean? Like you don't have this thing. So to have a child that has these special needs, it's like, man, give yourself grace.
Yeah.
Have communication.
Right.
Find people that speak life into you like that.
And community is so important. Like we have Nana and Papa, now we have Anthony and his soon-to-be
We have
wife.
Aunt Hannah, who's working, who's at
so
our house
God has
now.
brought us.
Yeah.
And to fast forward that story, we got home after Christmas. We had a week, and it was still a desperation. I finally was like, Lord, you got to show me something. Surely I can just pay out of pocket. I went and I opened my computer, and I was like, there's this homeopathic doctor who can also give scripts. I called. He didn't answer. And I'm like, okay, maybe that was a closed door. Within 30 seconds, this guy called me back. Now, doctors don't call you, right?
Never do.
They don't
And
call
this
you
was
back.
This was on
New Year's Eve.
New Year's Eve. And we said, well,
I mean, we're still desperate.
Because this was a Friday.
Yeah.
And he said, well, why don't you come in tomorrow?
Wow.
New Year's Eve day on a Saturday, and I'll see her tomorrow.
Yeah.
That
And
had
we're
to
like,
felt like just like a
it was
breath.
just like,
Well, it worked.
Yeah.
What he gave us worked. She started sleeping. Her mood was calmer, and just everything's been really good. She's been on the same medicine. But where was God in that? He was there all along,
Always.
right? Wow. But it was like sometimes you feel like he's not.
C.S.
You feel like
Lewis.
you're desperate and you're alone.
C.S. Lewis says that God shouts and screams in our pain. And so I know that it says that God is a still small voice, but I think that sometimes in the middle of our pain, he does shout and he does let us know, I'm in the middle of this. I'm not
God
absent from
shouted
it.
in her voice through one of our favorite songs that the first time I ever heard it was at the funeral. And
I was listening. Susie told me, because I'm an 80s hairband guy, so I want to listen to it. I just, sometimes if I'm in an angst mood, I just want to listen to AC/DC or something. And then that's just me. And so I just make Ashlyn listen to it. So Susie said, why don't you start listening to worship music in the truck when you're taking Ashlyn to school? And so I said, okay, I will, if I have to. And so I was listening.
during that crazy time before we got the medicine situated.
And so I started listening to Maverick
like,
City.
God isn't there, you know?
And I started noticing after about a week that Ashlyn was starting to say a couple of the words.
Singing her off-pitch
Just singing
voice.
in this kooky off-pitch voice. And then, like, in my most desperate moment, like, she sang, like, the whole thing. I put my faith in Jesus. He's the rock on which I stand. And I was like, I was so mad. I was like,
I put my faith in you, Jesus.
yeah,
because
because she was like, you, Jesus. And I'm like, well, she made it definitive. Like,
I put my faith in you,
it wasn't
Jesus.
just Jesus, it was you, Jesus.
Yeah.
And like Susie and I have tracked this back just a little bit, that Ashlyn had like probably the most cognitive clarity last 2 Julys ago, July of 2022. We had our baptism service. And I gave an altar call for people who wanted to get baptized. And I talked to them about, but you need to put your faith and trust in Jesus. And she was standing by another lady at our church, and she said, I can go do that.
Well, I had been talking to her a little bit.
Wow.
And she came forward and she wanted to get baptized. And literally, she's never done a rote prayer.
She
We're
doesn't like to pray. I'm not going to pray.
I'm
You've
not
been with
praying.
us when we prayed for Grace at the dinner table. I'm not praying.
I'm not praying.
Yeah.
Not praying.
But
Not
she that day, she totally repeated
The sinner's
Exactly.
prayer.
And she
prayed
got
to
in the
receive
pool,
Jesus.
got baptized.
God.
I mean, we believe that was just a moment that God spoke to her and,
Amen.
Yeah.
and changed her
And it
heart
was
and her
funny
life.
that it was on the heels of that all of this tension in her
Yeah.
not sleeping and everything. And I just believe that Satan hated that.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm going to create some tension, in the mental faculties. And we just kind of had to keep speaking against it and saying, and here's the deal. I don't think that I want to be careful how I say this. I believe in the God of miracles. And we have prayed for a miracle for almost 28 years, and God said no.
Yeah.
And I don't think that we didn't have enough faith, and I don't think I don't think we can pray this one away. And there's a whole lot of parents out there who have a special needs child who have been praying for God to heal them. But what if God says no?
Yeah.
Right.
He didn't heal everybody at the pool of Bethesda. So sometimes he doesn't. And when he doesn't, he's still good. He's still good and he's still God. And I just, want those parents to know that I know you've been praying for it, and maybe God's going to use it. He's going to heal through it. Mm-hmm. He's not going to heal it.
Yeah.
I'll
that-
tell you this.
yeah.
Dee and I could live on that point for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
Very long.
Yeah.
So, listen, man, I feel like I could talk to y'all for 2 hours about this one.
Yeah.
I'm going to end this by saying a couple things. One, I want to honor both of you and say, from people who have watched you for 20 years,
Yeah.
you have done an amazing job. You have loved well and diligently, even in the hard times, and watching that from afar, please know it's a credit to you. Obviously your walk with the Lord, but then your love for each other. The second thing that I will tell you is, it's been amazing to me how you raised your son to love her well.
And he does.
Yeah.
It's something I've never seen. Like, it's mind blowing to me how loving that young man is to his older sister. And that is a direct reflection of how you have loved and led in your home. And so please know, like, it's attributed to you.
I will say your lives have directly impacted our lives. And not just back in the youth days and all the things and the craziness, but even us walking through our loss and walking through the trial, knowing that there's people that are still taking the next right step,
Yeah.
still declaring God's faithfulness,
Yes.
even when you face really hard things,
Yes.
even when he doesn't choose to,
Yeah.
and using those hard things that we walk through to not only find strength, but also offer it to others. And so you have done that so well. So thank you so.
It's by the grace of God,
So
like I
much.
said.
I mean,
Every
it's
day.
the same with you guys. Is the same with us. It's God's
God-
faithful.
it's
And
good.
if our story can help another couple know that, hey, you can make it one more day.
Amen.
Just
Yeah.
make it one more day. Just choose to get up and love. Like Susie and I, we did it kind of goofily before we started, but
This is our mantra for
this was our mantra for
2024.
2024 is we were going to look each other in the eye every single day and tell each other that we love them and be intentional about it. So then we just do the kooky thing like, your eyes.
All right, well, listen, y'all can do that on your own time. Listen, we love y'all. Once again, we thank you for tuning in to this
Yes,
series as we
absolutely.
continue to look at different couples who are balancing life in their own unique way. Thank you guys. We look forward to. We will absolutely see you next week.
Once again, we want to say thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. Our true desire is this has brought value to you, your marriage, and or your family. The fact is, we can't do what we do without the support of you. By your liking, subscribing, and sharing this content, it reaches to those that are beyond our reach. Also, we would encourage you, check out our website, brokenforbetter.com. Become a monthly supporter, because by you supporting us, you too are making a difference in marriages.
We want to stay connected with you. So follow us on all the different social media platforms at Broken for Better, because on those different platforms, we're going to be giving tools, we're going to have events, all the different ways that we can stay connected, and we want to be connected.
one of the terms that we've adopted is if your marriage will visit a fitness center, you too can avoid a trauma center. We truly believe in marriage coaching. It doesn't matter what season of life you're in, whether your marriage is a 10 or whether your marriage is a 1. We offer marriage coaching to take it to another level.
Thank you for joining us.